So this is the weekly outlook for the third trading week of January 2026. This week I took a total of four different setups, three on majors, then one on indices. For the one on indices, this was the last trade I took. So let me just start from the first trade on GU. I had a bullish bias on GU for a while there. My bias is still bullish because on the monthly we are bullish, on the weekly we're also bullish, but we started disrespecting weekly PDRAs, so I just thought we could go lower on GU and EU. For the week's trade, since we flipped the weekly gap on EU and we have this weekly breakaway gap and this daily fair value gap here, I was looking if it was possible to take a shot towards that low for the week, since we're disrespecting weekly PDRAs. And with this daily fair value gap on GU, we had no weekly gap on GU, and this price leg came from this price leg here with a fair value gap. We respected this gap, then created this new price leg with another gap, plus this rejection candle made it an obvious shorts opportunity for shorts. So I waited to at least get a confirmation before executing. On Monday, when market opened, EU filled the gap first on the daily, and GU failed to fill that gap, giving us SMT at the highs. Now with this SMT at the highs, I was looking for this 4-hour gap to get disrespected first before I take any shots. SMT at the highs with EU at the 4-hour gap there, so I was not even planning to take EU in the first place. So this was the execution. Since we had the daily gap there and we had a 4-hour high there as a pivot, I used it as a pivot context for a 15-minute entry in London session. We took the trade and we got stopped that immediately. That was the only execution I had on. GU this week. Since we started going higher and flipped the context back into bullish market, now we are back to being bullish again. I just stopped trading it for now. I like to have a higher time frame context start first before I take my intraday setups. That was the trade on EU. Then we had USD JPY setups. And USD JPY, it was same thing. On USD JPY, I was originally bullish on DXY, but since we flipped the weekly bearish context on DXY, I started looking for longs. Looking back at it now, this was the rejection gap. I should have just ignored this gap. Probably this is a low probability gap due to the rejection at the highs. We had this disrespect of this weekly gap here. And USD card was also there, so I was looking to buy from the weekly gap. On Monday we filled that gap on the weekly, so I was waiting for higher prices. We had this trapped order flow here on the weekly. If we could get a bullish 4-hour impulse shift, I would have executed from here. It was what I was waiting for. Since I was waiting for a disrespect to that gap, we had this 1-hour impulse shift here. If we add another favorable gap here, it was looking good. So it's USD CHF. USD CHF. My only pair to trade was USD JPY. Then here on the daily, we had this daily gap we created on Monday. Also a rejection gap, so I did not expect it to hold at all. I was expecting a disrespect to that gap before I look for higher prices. We respected the gap here again on Tuesday. But then we had this 4-hour break out of the gap. This was 1 hour entry. Was it on Thursday I took this? Yeah, this was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. On Wednesday we had the disrespect of that gap. SMTs are this low, so it was looking okay to look for higher prices now. I was waiting for an entry and we got the entry here. 2 1 hour price legs. I put my stop loss at this low because we had a 4-hour gap somewhere here, and I was just putting in anticipation that the price could fall towards this point before going back up. We pushed higher, ignoring the 4-hour gap here. It didn't get up to 2 hours unfortunately before reversing, but before then I was waiting for an intraday setup since we're already looking higher. I did not trade in London because we had this favorable gap forming, this 4-hour gap forming. My plan was wait for it to form, then trade it in New York session. Then New York, we had the gap form. It was a consolidation gap, so it was a good gap to trade from. We had a gap, I was expecting an entry from here. So I broke even the first swing trade we had from somewhere here. I broke even the first swing trade, then was looking for an entry here. Markets filled the gap during New York session. This was the first trade. This was the favorable gap I had, because we had this week here. It was like a rejection. It was not a breakaway gap, so there was a good chance price could have filled this gap before going up. Hence the stop loss going here. Now during the kill zone, we had SFT at the lows with DXY. And we had a 15-minute impulse shift out of the 4-hour favorable gap, giving us a 4-hour to 15-minute context. Since I broke even the first trade, I executed this one for a 1 to 2 here. But my target was at the daily high. The plan was to take the trade. If it moves in profit, break even it once it gets to like the 4-hour context high, and just leave it. Unfortunately, both trades did not play out as planned. The 15 minutes one we got stopped at like in a couple of hours, got stopped out, and we got stopped at in break even here too. Then before price rallied back up and created this news event type of situation here. I feel like it was good that I put it on break even, because either way I might have gotten stopped out here. So that was the JPY trade. -1 on these two setups because we broke even this one, then took this loss. That was all for JPY. Then the third trade was from is on indices, Nasdaq to be precise. The trade is still active currently. When the week started, we already had like an SMT at the lows. This was from last week, the past week, the previous week. We had SMT at the lows here. It was it from this week, I think. Okay, let me go check. This was from this week, yeah. This was from this week. That SMT at the lows it's down, but I don't trade it down anymore. ES swept the low and NQ swept the low. So I was waiting for a reversal on NQ or ES. On the daily, we created this daily trapped order flow on NQ and ES. So I had market had to disrespect this gap if I would have entered. And on Thursday, was it on Thursday, I think, we got this fair value gap into that gap, then another gap through that daily gap, disrespecting it. NQ was stronger than ES, so I opted to trade NQ instead of ES. I was looking for an intraday setup right here, but I didn't get anything. I took the trade in equities open with this 4-hour gap here, since we already got this import shift here. This gap has already been used. I just use this gap as the entry, stop loss at the low, then targeting the highs. The trade is still active right now. For the week, took 2 losses on one break even. Not the best week. I think it will be best to avoid them when DXY is not moving in accordance in all time frames. I will just have to ignore it. This is the NQ setup, still running though. Even got disrespect on Thursday. When did I went at the trade? Was it on Thursday? Yeah, on Thursday. Sketchy type of movement, but it's already been triggered, so I don't like all time trade after I've placed it. I just take the loss like that. Anyway, that's all for the weekly outlook this week. Hopefully next week I do better performance wise and the market delivers too.